tonight on First at 9 this Saturday the 13th of September 2025. Digital Drive. Sri Lanka expects to achieve 5x growth in the digital economy, says Dr. Hans Surya. Sri Lanka's digital economy to expand to $15 billion within the next 4 years. Cuffed and collared. Police Special Task Force arrests suspect believed to be the gunman of 4 murders committed in August. Warm wishes. President Anura Dissanayake congratulates the newly appointed interim Prime Minister of Nepal. The Global Citizen. Sri Lanka welcomes UNGA's adoption of the resolution endorsing the two-state solution to address the crisis in Gaza. Sri Lanka meanwhile expresses solidarity with Qatar, raising concerns on recent Israeli strikes.
Kalin baby so rupial 90කට. Kalin baby podi හැමෝටමයි.
This is Derana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to Derana First at 9. I'm Aditya Drisingha joining you live with the latest in Sri Lanka and around the world. Brought to you by the only Sri Lankan media network to rise to the pinnacle across all media platforms. Recognized as the best by every survey and beloved by the people. Now in your top story tonight, the Police Special Task Force today arrested a suspect believed to be the gunman in 4 recent murders, including the killing of a former prison officer in Bandaragama and the murder of 2 youths in Borella. In the meantime, the former chairman of the Wattegama Urban Council, SLPP member Ravindra Bandara, and a former coordinating secretary of the late former State Minister Lohan Ratwatte were arrested today by the Police Central Crime Investigation Bureau over the illegal import and fraudulent registration of 2 vehicles.
The assailant involved in the killing of 2 youths in Sirisara Uyana Borella on the 7th of August was apprehended yesterday at Siambalandua Ampara following a tip-off received by the Special Raid Unit of the Sri Jayawardhanapura Special Task Force Base. During interrogations, the suspect confessed to the murder of a former prison officer near the Thunbodia Bridge in Bandaragama on the 21st of August. Furthermore, the suspect confessed to the murder of Kudunilanga's father-in-law, who was shot dead on the 27th of August in Alubogahawatta Panadura. All 3 shootings were carried out using T-56 rifles. Accordingly, the police revealed that the suspect has killed 4 people during 3 separate shootings within the month of August. Law enforcement authorities also found over 10 grams of methamphetamine in the possession of the suspect at the time of his arrest. The police further revealed that the suspect had deserted the army in 2015 and has maintained close contacts with known criminals such as Kudu Salindu, Dehibale Ayya, Dehibale Malli and Waligama Sahan. The police believe the suspect to be a hitman for syndicates of organized crime. The suspect has been handed over to the Damana police for further investigations. In the meantime, underworld figure Bako Saman, who was arrested alongside Kehel Badara Padme, has confessed that he supplied a firearm and a stock of ammunition to an associate residing in Gangaara and Bilipitia. Acting on the information uncovered, the police promptly apprehended the suspect, who purportedly took possession of the firearm and the stock of ammunition. The information uncovered also led the police to recover a T-81 rifle, 97 rounds of T-56 ammunition, 2 T-56 magazines and an army camouflage uniform hidden away in a plot of land. Upon further questioning, the suspect admitted to transporting firearms to several locations, acting on the instructions of Bako Saman. Further investigations are being conducted by the Director of the Western Province North Crime Division, Assistant Superintendent of Police Rohan Olugala and Chief Inspector Linton Silva. Meanwhile, the former chairman of the Wattegama Urban Council, SLPP member Ravindra Bandara, and a former coordinating secretary of the late former State Minister Lohan Ratwatte were arrested today by the Homicide and Organised Crime Investigation Unit of the Police Central Crime Investigation Bureau. They were arrested over the illegal import and the fraudulent registration of 2 SUVs. The vehicles confiscated were located subsequent to a tip-off received by the Inspector General of Police. Investigations reveal that the suspects manipulated official records to get 2 vehicles fraudulently registered with the Department of Motor Traffic. Accordingly, the 2 suspects were remanded until the 15th of September after being produced before the Theldenia acting magistrate today. Further police investigations are underway.
රුපියල් 8900ක මාසික වාරිකයකට brand new TVS Excel 100 යතුරු පැදියක් ගන්න.
Now, the Bribery Commission has filed an indictment against Ramit Rambukwella, son of former Minister Keheli Rambukwella, before the Colombo High Court for failing to disclose how he acquired assets worth over 270 million rupees within a period of 21 months. The case filed under the Anti-Corruption Act charges the accused, who also served as the private secretary to the former minister, with failing to disclose how he acquired cash and property amounting to 275.30 million rupees out of assets and property amounting to 296.56 million rupees acquired by him between January 2022 and November 2023. The undeclared assets include 2 luxury apartments in Colombo 7, 4 bank accounts under his name, 4 under his wife's name, and a Land Rover Discovery valued at over 18 million rupees. The indictments were filed before the Colombo High Court under the Anti-Corruption Act. Representatives of the Chamber of Young Lankan Entrepreneurs as well as the construction sector met with President Anura Dissanayake and held preliminary discussions on the 2026 appropriation bill at the Presidential Secretariat. President Dissanayake emphasizes that the 2026 budget will focus on government modernization, including the incorporation of modern technology into the public service, as well as advancing digitalization initiatives.
A preliminary 2026 budget discussion between President Anura Dissanayake and representatives of the Chamber of Young Lankan Entrepreneurs was held at the Presidential Secretariat yesterday. During the meeting, President Anura Dissanayake asserted that the government will provide necessary infrastructure, enact rules and regulations, and also regulate business activities while expanding market opportunities for domestic entrepreneurs. President Dissanayake further emphasized that the government expects local business people and entrepreneurs to contribute to the country's economic growth to the fullest extent. Representatives of the Chamber of Young Lankan Entrepreneurs formally appraised the President in writing of the challenges and issues grappling young entrepreneurs. They also presented proposals to address the concerns raised. Further speaking at the meeting, President Anura Dissanayake stated that this year's budget places special emphasis on modernizing the government, adding that particular attention has been given to providing the public service with necessary modern technologies and facilities, as well as advancing digitalization initiatives. In the meantime, President Anura Dissanayake also met with representatives of the construction sector and held a preliminary 2026 budget discussion. The discussion was focused on expanding construction services overseas and exporting equipment related to the sector, such as electric cables, with the ultimate target of driving export revenue. Construction sector representatives appraised the President of issues impeding the development of the sector as an export-oriented industry. Representatives also presented solutions to address such concerns and discussed resolutions with the President. President Anura Dissanayake assured that the government will intervene where necessary to address issues faced by the construction sector.
Now, President Anura Dissanayake extended his congratulations today to Sushila Karki on her appointment as Nepal's interim Prime Minister. Taking to X, President Dissanayake expressed confidence that her leadership will guide Nepal towards a smooth return to lasting peace and democracy. Nepal's interim Prime Minister Sushila Karki became the first woman to lead the country after massive anti-corruption protests. Now, addressing concerns impeding the integration of school development officers into Sri Lanka's teaching service, opposition leader Sajith Premadasa purports that the government is using school development officers as pawns in an elaborate political chess game. Speaking to media this morning, the opposition leader called on the President and the Prime Minister to provide justice to school development officers who are now being asked to follow the regular procedure to enter the teaching service.
The Graduate Association staged a protest before the Fort Railway Station today, demanding the integration of school development officers into the teaching service of Sri Lanka. Opposition leader Sajith Premadasa visited the scene this morning.
I raised this issue in Parliament yesterday. The government's response was that this is not an issue of national importance. Back in 2020, 53,000 graduates were recruited, out of which 22,000 were integrated as teachers. The government is now asking school development officers to follow the regular procedure to enter the teaching service after depending on their services at a crucial time. These employees should be recruited as trainee teachers, classified under grade 2 of the teaching service for 3 years. During those 3 years, these trainee teachers could obtain their postgraduate diploma. That was the settlement agreed in court. Unfortunately, the government is not implementing that settlement. Those who taught students for a span of 6 years are now being asked to follow the old procedure to enter the teaching service. Back in 2005, graduates who engaged in the teaching service as trainee teachers until 2004 were integrated into the teaching service. If that was how things were done in 2005, why can't they do the same in 2025? The government used the 16,600 graduates for their political agenda and have now discarded them. We will not allow this to continue. We request the President and the Prime Minister to render justice to these school development officers. Now, leader of Sarvajana Balaya, parliamentarian Dilith Jayavira, asserts that the incumbent government has become a puppet of separatist forces. Meanwhile, MP Jayavira also called on former President Mahinda Rajapaksa at his residence in Tangol today.
Leader of Sarvajana Balaya, parliamentarian Dilith Jayavira, and several other leaders of the party called on former President Mahinda Rajapaksa at Carlton House, Tangol this morning. The establishment of the Sarvajana Council of the Akurasa electorate was held today. We visited former President Mahinda Rajapaksa this morning. Mahinda Rajapaksa, whom we all love, ended a 30-year war in Sri Lanka. However, he was unfortunately punished. He was punished by the separatists upon whom the government depends. This has been happening for quite some time now. We accept the fact that within this political system, politicians have unnecessarily used state assets. This includes Mahinda Rajapaksa as well. However, you must all understand the underlying political ambition behind these efforts. The number of funerals of war veterans I've attended is uncountable. In my time, I have attended so many funerals of war veterans. It was definitely a dark chapter in Sri Lanka's history. We must keep in mind that we are not an ungrateful nation that will forget how that dark chapter in Sri Lanka's history came to an end. What good would dragging Mahinda Rajapaksa, who is sick, out of his home do? What good would come out of making this story pop up in national headlines? This government is nothing but a puppet. This government is working for other forces. This government is being pushed forward by other forces. There are definitely certain cases of corruption and they must be stopped. However, the Palavatta theory that accommodates tax exemptions and luxurious lives is not considered corruption. We never lived off our comrades. All of us paid our taxes and we continue to pay our taxes. How many of the government MPs are paying their taxes? Has the NPP party fund paid off taxes? No, they have not. When they take money, they call themselves comrades. When someone else does it, they are labelled thieves. How is that fair? Did their comrades fund their party? Is the diaspora their comrades? Precisely, is Ibrahim, who is the father of 2 bombers of the Easter Sunday attacks, a comrade?
Ibrahim sahodarayada aneka thamai me mithyawa.
The incumbent government's decision to repeal all perks enjoyed by former presidents continues to dominate political discourse. Now let's take a look at the latest thoughts shared in that regard. The incumbent president decided to refuse all perks and privileges available to him upon his retirement from office. That decision was what was passed in Parliament as the President's Entitlement Repeal Bill. As a consequence, all other former presidents had to give up the privileges they enjoyed. That is the truth. The NPP must remember that they came to power off the back of SLPP's original vote bank. They came to power because those voters were disappointed with the SLPP. Those voters will never allow the legendary Mahinda Rajapaksa to be harmed.
සද්ද දැම්මේ කොහොමද? අයින් කරොත් මුළු රට වටලනවා. හැබැයි මොකුත් නැහැ. සංදර්ශනයක් පැවැත්තුවා. ටාල්ටන් එකෙන් පස්සේ වැඩේ ඉවරයි. මේක ඇතුලේ යටින් දිවෙන කාරණාව තමයි නාමල් උස්සන්න නම් පරණ බහණ්ඩේම තමයි විකුණන්න පුළුවන් වෙන්නේ.
කවුරු හරි කෙනෙක් ගණන් හදලා දාලා තිබුණා සමාජ මාධ්‍යයක.
Some on social media calculated the cost incurred to sustain privileges enjoyed by former presidents. According to them, the official residences and the staff of former presidents were reclaimed by the government. The computations indicate that the per capita cost saving generated through this decision is about 4 rupees per annum. What will this 4 rupee saving translate to in terms of economic development? Many have started to calculate the savings generated by the abolition of presidential privileges. That is certainly a positive development. However, what is more important is the precedent this decision sets. Many expect pensions of parliamentarians to also be abolished. Legislation is being drafted for the purpose. Incumbent MPs and those who already receive pensions will be impacted by this decision. The government seems to be inciting public hate instead of achieving economic goals. They have been stifling dissenting opinions by perpetuating rumors. They are playing games instead of inspiring the renaissance they said they would bring about. Welcome back. Now, Chief Advisor to the President on Digital Economy, Dr. Hans Vijayasuriya, claims that the government expects to achieve 5x growth in the digital economy, aiming to expand the sector to $15 billion within the next 4 years. He made these remarks during the recent launch of the Supreme Court case management system and its official website.
The launch of the Supreme Court case management system and its official website was held yesterday at the premises of the Sri Lanka Judges Institute in Colombo. The event was hailed as the first step of the e-court project to accelerate the digitalization of the judicial system with the aim of increasing efficiency and providing effective judicial services to the public. The event was presided over by Chief Justice Preeti Padman Surasena. Among the chief guests of the event were Minister of Justice and National Integration Harshana Nanayakara, Deputy Minister of Digital Economy Eranga Weeraratna, the members of the Judicial Service Commission, Supreme Court Justices Mahinda Samewardana and S. Thurai Raja, and President of the Bar Association of Sri Lanka, Attorney at Law Rajiv Amarasuriya.
Many of us have now for several years been consistently calling for this transformation, and sometimes it has been a lone voice. This launch today is not just about adapting to new technology. It is about restoring public trust in our justice system. It is about making the constitutional promise of equal justice real and practical in the daily lives of our citizens. Sri Lanka too can chart its own path, rooted in our traditions but open to global best practices. And today that journey begins. Together, let us open a new chapter in our constitutional journey, one where justice is not delayed, not denied, but delivered fairly, efficiently, transparently for every citizen of this wonderful island.
This occasion marks not just a step forward for our judiciary, but a milestone for our entire nation. For far too long, our courts, like many of our institutions, have relied on traditional paper-based systems. While they served us well in the past, they are no longer adequate for the demands of modern society. Manual records, delays, and the need for constant physical attendance have often stood in the way of timely justice. In today's fast-changing world, where citizens expect efficiency, accessibility, and transparency, the need for digitalization is no longer optional, it's essential. This transformation demonstrates that Sri Lanka is ready to embrace technology to serve its people better and to align itself with global best practice.
I think His Lordship, the Chief Justice, and everyone involved in this project have taken that initiative, and then with the will to go towards a complete e-court system for Sri Lanka. And this is the kind of pioneering and frontier leadership that we require across all institutions of government and state, because the digitalization of our economy cannot take place unless each and every institution joins this race. And here what we are aiming to achieve is a 5x growth in the digital economy, which today is around 3% of our total economy at around $3 to $4 billion to grow the digital economy to around 15 billion in the next 4 years by 2030. So this is a 5x growth, a complete quantum leap in our positioning with respect to penetration of the digital economy into the macro economy.
In the Constitution, Chief Justice is the head of the judiciary. And all judges exercise judicial power of the people. Except the judicial power of the people, we don't have any other power. We exercise judicial power of the people to the betterment of the people. So it is in that spirit that we thought we have an obligation, both legal and social. We have a duty to deliver justice effectively, efficiently, impartially to the people of this country. It is to achieve that result that we embarked on the digitalization program today.
Welcome back. Highlighting that debt distress and human misery remain defining challenges in South Asia, Visiting Senior Fellow at the Overseas Development Institute and Professorial Fellow at Gateway House, Dr. Ganeshan Vignaraja underscores that sustainable economic growth hinges on maintaining the current pace of reforms. He made these remarks at the official launch of the South Asia Sustainability and Security Research Institute.
The South Asia Sustainability and Security Research Institute was officially launched in Colombo recently. The gathering convened a distinguished assembly of attendees, including ambassadors, high commissioners, senior state officials, representatives from the Triforces, and other notable individuals.
We are driven on the purpose of creating economic resilience, sustainability, good governance, and driving a policy narrative based on data-driven insights. We believe we can achieve this through fostering greater partnerships, leveraging regional expertise, and going beyond South Asia. Sri Lanka can play an important role to be a catalyst to drive this agenda forward. In order to do that, we need to move away from a myopic thinking to a more collaborative approach. Regional security is not just about defense and protecting one's territorial integrity. It's about a much more broader picture. Whilst the problems do exist, we also need to be able to ensure that policymakers are not driven purely on a political agenda alone, but on creating policies that are helpful to create the nation and the future generations a sustainable pathway.
Delivering special remarks, visiting Senior Fellow at the Overseas Development Institute and Professorial Fellow at Gateway House, Dr. Ganeshan Vignaraja stressed that lessons from both regional reforms and international collaboration can guide sustainable growth across South Asia.
Now, South Asia is really in a pivotal moment today, and there's a kind of an optimism about the region. And then there is this interesting issue of Sri Lanka, which has come out of this crippling debt and economic crisis a couple of years ago to this remarkable recovery. But the serious point really is that debt distress and human misery are very much a feature of South Asia. The lesson really that Sasri should take on board is that economic security is really a non-negotiable as we think of national security. So there are many lessons from our sad experience here, but equally from the remarkable recovery where the IMF played a role, the government played a role, and the central bank. Now, reforms from East Asia show that growth can only come about if you sustain the momentum for reform. When we look at South Asia more generally, we see there are these multiple challenges in the era of the polycrisis, multiple shocks that are affecting the region. And we need an interdisciplinary approach really to deal with this, to understand all of this interdependent way and formulate a strategic response.
The keynote address was delivered by the Director of the International Relations Office and Centre for Strategic Assessment at KDU, Dr. Harinda Vidanage.
Sasri is coming up at a time in Sri Lanka where a small state is kind of thrown up with the turbulence a small state is facing with these transitions. In that context, what are we going to do? One of the things that's really missing in our Sri Lankan context is a major deficit in strategic thought. That's the area we need to work on. What Sasri can do and what other think tanks should do is creating this ecosystem of constant engagement and cohabitation. In maritime spaces, occupying or being present in key locations serves a strategic purpose. Hence, you have the modern day maritime strategies. Small island nations like Sri Lanka find ourselves at the intersection of that. With these global disruptions, it's going to create more and more disruptions and rivalries, which I call the iron triangle of geopolitics. This iron triangle will dominate politics as well as developments going forward for at least for the next half century. That is what think tanks have to be prepared for.
Further special remarks were delivered by former military advisor to the Prime Minister of India, retired Lieutenant General Vinod G. Khandare, and Chief Strategic Officer of the Synergia Foundation and former Director General of the Defence Intelligence Agency India, retired Lieutenant General G.A.V. Reddy.
There's a lot that needs to be done to analyze issues, the current issues, the futuristic issues, and thereafter come up with assessments and recommendations. That is how any think tank would be expected to do. and think tanks are essentially a support system of society, support system of the government. In the current geopolitical environment, we are talking of comprehensive national power and comprehensive national security. National security cannot be only looked at from the military viewpoint. There are so many ministries which need support system. The private sector needs a lot of education. The private sector needs hand-holding. The startups, they need a lot of innovation. They need the kind of support system, and that's what I think a good think tank would do. Now in the region, there is so much that's happening. There is so much of uncertainty, and there is so much of focus towards South Asia.
Together, we intend to work hereafter on the principle of peace, progress and prosperity in the entire region. We will also collaborate to work on themes which will improve the overall stability of the region as well as the humanity, whatever it is required to improve the quality of life of the humanity in this part of the world.
Now, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Foreign Employment and Tourism asserts that Sri Lanka welcomes the adoption by the United Nations General Assembly of the resolution endorsing the New York Declaration on the peaceful settlement of the question of Palestine and the implementation of the two-state solution. In a statement today, the ministry extended its appreciation to Saudi Arabia and France for their leadership in this important initiative. The declaration endorsed by the resolution says the war in Gaza must end now and supports the deployment of a temporary international stabilization mission mandated by the UN Security Council. Now, on a similar theme, Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs Arun Hemachandra expressed solidarity with Qatar with regard to a deadly Israeli strike on Doha this week, targeting Hamas political leadership in Doha. The Deputy Minister appreciated Qatar's constructive role in mediation and humanitarian outreach at this critical time. The Deputy Minister added that talks reaffirmed the importance of sovereignty, territorial integrity and the urgent need to safeguard peace and humanitarian relief. That's all the news we have for you tonight. Thank you. Have a great night.